Hey friends, it's Justin Adkins from Just a Note by Justin, and I'm so excited to be on the Scrapbook.com YouTube channel today, sharing some summertime inspiration with y'all. I am using the Summertime Shape Dies, the Sunny Days Ahead stencil, the Bold Curves A2 dies, and the Hello Sunshine word dies to create a really fun summery project. Of course, that's going to take place at the beach. So what we're going to go ahead and do is let's get into our background creation first. To make my background, I'm grabbing the Sunshine Smooth cardstock and I'll be using the yellow paper from this as the base for my background. I've also grabbed carved pumpkin and ripe persimmon distress oxide inks to help my blend. Using my foam blending tool, I'm going to go ahead and apply some carved pumpkin oxide ink to the bottom half of my paper. I'm lightly lifting the pressure as I'm building up towards the top of the paper, as I do want this carved pumpkin to blend as nice as possible into that yellow background. Now I'm going to go ahead and apply some ripe persimmon ink, blending that into the carved pumpkin, but the ripe persimmon, as it's darker, is going to be the base and towards the bottom. So once I'm happy with the way that my blend goes, I'm going to use my Sunny Days Ahead stencil and place it on top of my background. I've got some 1-inch mint tape that I'll be using to adhere my background to my stencil, and this will help secure it as I move on to my next phase of ink blending. I do end up securing my stencil on multiple ends just to make sure it's not going to shift at all during my blending process. So once my stencil is nice and in place, I use the Hero Hues Unicorn White pigment ink, and I take my large Scrapbook.com blending brush and I apply that pigment ink directly onto my paper over the stencil. I'm applying the pigment ink more thicker towards the bottom orange portion, and I'm letting it get a little lighter as we get towards the top of the paper. What this white pigment ink is going to do is it's going to make my ink lighter on the exposed areas, and then it's going to have a contrast to the areas that are concealed underneath the stencil. So I'm going to remove my stencil, and you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about, and we have this really pretty sun ray background. Oh, I just love this look. It's going to be so fun for a beach project. I'm putting some ripe persimmon smushed onto my glass mat and wetting it with some water. Using a watercolor brush, I'm going to splatter it lightly onto my background. Now once that's dry, I use some liquid snowflake white paper splatter by Picket Fence Studios, and I wet that with a little bit of water as well. I'm going to pick that up with a clean brush and splatter that onto my background, and this is going to give some glittery white splatters to complement that ripe persimmon splattering as well. Setting the panel aside to dry, it's time to work on my sandy background. I'm grabbing the light tan paper from the Daybreak A2 paper pad and my Bold Curve A2 card dies. And I'm only going to be using the bottom portion of the A2 curve die, so I'm going to secure the die to my paper with some mint tape, and I don't need to use all of it. That's why I just have it kind of hanging off the end like this. I realistically could have die cut the whole thing and saved some pieces for later. I process this through my die cutting machine, and then I have my die cut waves ready to go. Like I said, I'm just using the bottom two, and I'm going to use my domed tool to blend some brushed corduroy distress oxide ink on the bottom of my edge. And I love using brushed corduroy for sand. For whatever reason, it just really captures that yellow goldenrodness that sand can have. So I ink blend it on the bottom of both of my curved portions, and we are going to go ahead and make sure that those blends are nice and seamless. Now that I'm happy with the way that my blends have turned out, I'm smushing brushed corduroy, vintage photo, and black soot distress oxide inks onto my glass mat. I add a little bit of water and I splattered the brushed corduroy first, the vintage photo second, and the black soot third on top of my sand to make it look a little sandy and speckly. I grabbed that liquid snowflake paperwhite paper splatter once again from Picket Fence Studio. I wet it with a little bit of water just to make it easier to splatter, and I pick it up with a clean watercolor brush, so that I'm able to go ahead and splatter it onto my project. I don't go too much with this, just keeping it nice and light, and then I set these panels aside to dry. Now let's do some more die cutting with the summertime shape dies. So I'll be grabbing the summertime shape dies, the sunshine smooth cardstock, and the mixed media paper. I'll be using a handful of different elements from the summertime shape dies to build up a little beachy scene. So we're going to be using the crab, and I'm going to put that onto the dark pink paper. I'm also going to be using the little shell, putting that onto the light pink paper. I've got a scrap of yellow paper that I'm going to cut some flip-flops from. And so I get that nice and secured with some mint tape. I do reach for a starfish, which in the end I end up not using. And then I've got my little flip-flop straps with the minty green paper. I grabbed the Daybreak cardstock once again because I also wanted to build a sandcastle, and I wanted the sandcastle to be the same color as the ground. So I'm getting all of the elements of my sandcastle onto my panel, and I'm going to tack that down with some mint tape. There's also the little die piece that includes the windows and the door for the sandcastle, so I have the darker brown cardstock from the Daybreak panel as well. In order to maximize the amount of space that I'm using on my sandwich for my die cutting machine and minimizing the amount of times I have to process, I do trim down all of my elements. Using mixed media paper in white, there are the background pieces, or the outline dies as you'd like to call them, for each of the shapes. So I lay those down, and then I begin the process of tacking them down on mint tape as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of those situated, and those are going to serve as nice little pieces to adhere to the back of each of the die cuts so that they pop nicely. Using a piece of black mixed media paper, I do the little die for the eyes for the crab. So I want to just get that nice and put into place so that I can get that crab's eyes all taken care of. Now let's work on a little bit of ink blending since all of my dies have been cut out. We're going to start with the sandcastle, and I'm using the exact same process that I did to blend out my sandy beach scene. So we're going to use that brushed corduroy distress oxide ink on the bottom of each of the panels, letting it get lighter as we go to the top. Now there's 4 total elements that you use when it comes to building the actual sandcastle itself. There's the main building, there's like a top bridge, and 2 towers. So I'm ink blending each of those, and now I'm going to do a little bit of splattering using the brushed corduroy, vintage photo, and a black soot distress oxide ink. So I'm going to spread these out, and then I'm going to spray each of the inks to water them down a little bit for easy splattering, and then I'll begin my splattering process. This is going to allow my sandcastle to have the exact same look and feel as the sandy ground that we've already blended up for our project. I do love using oxides for splattering because I find that they dry rather quickly, and they do also maintain their splattery shape once hitting the paper. Of course, we're going to use that liquid snowflake white paper splatter by Picket Fence Studio once again, wetting it down, picking it up with a clean brush, emphasizing clean brush because you don't want to discolor that white paper splatter. Now I can begin the process of building my sandcastle. So using my Misty Precision glue press, I go ahead and take the base of my castle and adhere it to the white outline piece. I go ahead and I take the bridge portion and adhere that into place, and then I adhere both of the towers. You will be able to tell which tower goes on which side because of the thickness of the spires on top, so use that as a map when you're putting those into place. Once I've got all of my little towers and bridge into place, I can start adding the doors and windows. Now, I did skip over this portion a little bit for the card just because I didn't think you needed to see me putting each of these little pieces into place. But now that they're all taken care of, I am going to put my little flag on top of my flagpole, and my sandcastle piece is all completed. The crab is not going to be as long and tedious to put together. I use some Festive Berries Distress Oxide ink to blend on the bottom and just give the crab a nice little variation of color and some shadowing. So once I have the crab all taken care of, I go ahead, put some liquid adhesive on the back and adhere it to its white outline piece. I put it on the outline piece before I did the eyes because it kind of mapped out where the eyes should go, since you can see the little eye bumps on the white outline piece. So I've got that taken care of. I'm using my little craft tool to push my eyes into place, and my crab is complete as well. Using some residual Festive Berries ink, I blend it on the bottom of my seashell and adhere my seashell to its white outline die cut piece. This is probably the easiest die cut I've had to get together yet because it's just one little piece, put it into place, and it's good to go. I'm grabbing some carved pumpkin distress oxide ink now to ink blend the bottom of my two little flip-flops. So I'll get those all taken care of. I'll adhere them onto their white background, and then I will get my little greenish blue mint flip-flop straps adhered and put into place as well. With my elements taken care of, it's now time to work on my sentiment with the Hello Sunshine word dies. And of course, we're going to use the sentiment, Hello Sunshine, because how perfect for our scene. We're going to be cutting it out from white and black mixed media paper. I've got some scraps from what we've used already. And what I'll do is put the outline piece onto the black mixed media paper. So this is what I'll adhere each of my letters to, tacking it down with cement tape, and then put my letters and words die cut onto the white paper for the mixed media paper, and we'll die cut from that. I take my sentiments and process them through my die cutting machine so that they're ready to go. Once they're all cut out, I begin the process of building my sentiment. I'll first take my sunshine word die and I'll go ahead and adhere that with my Misty Precision glue press, getting it nicely into place. I don't want to forget about the dot for the eye, so I take a little dot of glue and I put my little dot into place. Now I do have to spell out hello with each individual letter, so I did fast forward through this portion a little bit, just showing you how I start with the H and I actually end up ending with the E because I wanted to make sure that my spacing for each of the letters was as even as possible and that O didn't look crowded at the very end. So I've got my sentiment all situated and we can now begin the process of putting our scene together. So I'm going to first adhere my largest wavy piece because that'll show me how much space I have on the bottom of my card, and then I will use the smaller piece and adhere that directly on top. And I've got like two little sandy dunes. Next, using some Scrapbook.com foam strips, I'm going to cut them to size on two of the elements, that being the sandcastle and the crab, because I want them to be the forefront images of the project. So we're going to put foam tape onto these two images, just kind of using as much foam tape as needed to secure them. And then I will also be using foam tape on the back of my sentiment as well, because I love a good sentiment that pops. So this is definitely going to fit the bill in that regard. After trimming my foam strips down with a non-stick scissor, I then can begin putting my elements into place. So I've got my sandcastle a little lopsided as intended on my card. Using my liquid adhesive, I put my little flip-flops into place slightly tucked underneath of my sandcastle. I then adhere my seashell and I finish off by adhering the last of my images, which is the crab. I remove the backing from my sentiment and put my Hello Sunshine sentiment nice and into place towards the top center of my card. I just love this sentiment. I love how the black background really makes it pop nicely. And I just want to add a couple clear glitter enamel dots to my card for some extra embellishment. These ones are from Pink and Maine. So once my card panel is all ready to go, I take my Misty Precision glue press, I adhere the back of my card to the front of an A2 sized card panel, and this summary card is fully completed. Thank you guys so very much for stopping by the Scrapbook.com YouTube channel for some sunny summery inspiration. I hope this card jumpstarts some ideas for ways that you can use your favorite Scrapbook.com products to send some sunshine to a loved one. I'd love if you took a moment to follow me on Instagram and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Just a Note by Justin. And don't forget, for the best selection, fast shipping, and free inspiration, Scrapbook.com has you covered. Thanks again for stopping by and have a crafty day.